Hey, this is David for Big Bits, and in this video we're going to take a look at creating an RSI based strategy to try to find the bottom on the chart and maybe even potentially find a bullish divergence on the chart using the RSI and the smoothed RSI. So I've got the smoothed RSI indicator that I've created in another video here. If you want to check that video out, just go to my channel and you can go back, and it's in the tutorial playlist here, and you can see how we created this one. But what we're going to be focusing on in this video as part of the strategy is looking at how we can capture the length of a downtrend. So you can see here in the strategy with the code that I already have, it bought at a low point here. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to make sure that we capture that the length of the smooth RSI, the downtrend, was at least 3 candles long, and that way we can basically guarantee that the price has continued to move down while the RSI is low. And we're also going to pair that with making sure that the RSI and the smooth RSI are below a certain number as well. That way we can pretty much guarantee that that downward trend always occurs at a low price, because the RSI and the smooth RSI are both going to be considered oversold. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. We're also going to look at carrying over data from previous candles. That way, if you want to keep track of like the lowest price in a series and you want that line plotted over and over and over until it gets broken again and you have new lows, then what we can do is we can carry that data over from previous candles and continue to plot those. And I'll show you how to do that in the video as well. Although we're not going to actually add that to the strategy, I will show you how to do it. So to get started, we have the smooth RSI indicator here, and I have it set up a little bit different than the defaults that we use because I found the whole moving average to work a little bit better and a shorter whole moving average. That's because the RSI moves pretty quickly, and the whole moving average usually gives you pretty smooth curves, and with a shorter value like that, it's going to have those nice smooth curves much quicker. So that's why I went with the whole moving average, and that one's actually baked into the script. It means this isn't an option for you in the script that I'm showing you, but it is actually hard-coded in there. And by hard-coded, I mean you can't change the calculation through any setting. That's basically all that means, is that the code is put in there. There's no way to manipulate how that is calculated with any sort of setting. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, I want to show you some of the things that are already part of this strategy. We're going to take a look at strategy tester. And doop. God damn it. God fucking damn it. Hey, this is David for Big Bits, and in this video we're going to take a look at an RSI based strategy, but we're going to really focus on capturing the length of downtrends. So we're going to look at the smoothed RSI here on this orange line, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep track of how long a downtrend has been occurring on the smooth line, which is the orange line on the chart. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want to buy on our strategy when we have had a downtrend of at least, let's say, 3 candles, while the RSI and the smooth RSI are both below a certain level. That way we can kind of try to find a bottom in the price, because usually if the price has been going down and both lines are oversold, it usually means that you're probably due for a bounce, and that might have been a bullish divergence on the RSI, although in this particular case it is not a divergence, but there is a chance it could catch those, as you are having a pretty much second downtrend oftentimes. But we'll go into that a little bit later in another video. For now, we're just focusing on carrying over data from previous candles, and I'll show you what I mean by that, but also capturing the length of the downtrend, and we also do that by carrying over the data. I'm going to show you another way to work that as well that isn't really related to the strategy. But say, for example, you want to plot the lowest lows or some sort of level on the chart, and you want to carry that over from candle to candle, and you can actually combine that with the trend length to say, once we've had this trend going for so many candles, we'll move our lowest low up. Something like that. You can do that by capturing the trend length and also combining that with carrying over the value of the lowest low from candle to candle. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit, but for now I think I'm going to remove my face from the video, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at this particular strategy a little bit more in depth. And before I do that, first of all, I should mention that the smooth RSI is not using as a default setting. So if you add this indicator, which is available in the TradingView public library, it is different than the default settings. And the reason I've done that is because I needed a quicker smoothing period because we're working with 5-minute candles and we're working with a smoother trend with the HMA. So I wanted shorter periods so that we can capture the downtrend quicker. It turns out when you use longer periods on the smooth RSI with this particular strategy, that it usually kind of catches things either too early or too late. And I found out that the whole moving average with an 8 period works out the best. So now that that's over with, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the actual code we've got here. There's a few things that we've already covered in the series so far that are already built in. We have our take profits. These are inputs for the strategy. I'll just kind of go over all the inputs right now since they're going to be shown next to the code here. And the first one we have is a take profit percentage and a stop loss percentage. Then we have an RSI look back period. That's how far back, how many candles we go back to calculate the RSI. And we also want to require that the current RSI is below 20 based on the default setting. So the blue line here is below 20. So that condition is met. Then the smooth RSI, we're going to use an 8-period whole moving average. The reason I have the smooth moving average indicator shown here is so that we can kind of see what's going on without actually having to plot anything on the screen. Now, the last input that we have is for a minimum smooth RSI downtrend length. And this is what we're going to be focusing on in the video, is capturing how long the downtrend has been for the smooth RSI so that we can kind of carry this information over from candle to candle. Now, we have this stored in here and we actually need to find the length of the trend down. We're actually going to be doing that. So let me close that out. You can see we've calculated the RSI using the close. I don't have an option for you to change that in here. If you want that, please let me know. I don't think you really need to do that. But we also have the whole moving average kind of hard coded in here so that it will use the RSI as the source and also the smooth RSI length. And the way it's worded in the variables here is the SRSI curve. Then, of course, we also calculate our profit target, which is based on the close price times the take profit percentage divided by 100. So we also got that to work with. And then we also do something that's a little bit new. I don't know if I did this before, but we are creating a Boolean variable, and we're going to be putting multiple conditions in there to tell us whether or not it should qualify as a buy signal or a sell signal. So to buy, right now we currently have the RSI below the input that we had for the RSI currently below, and also to be true must be the smooth RSI also must be below its SRSI currently below input. So kind of have an idea of what's going on here. Now I know we also set the profit target and the loss target, but what can happen a lot of times is the price can kind of just go sideways and you want to get out of the trade. So if you flip your equity more and more on a high percentage winning trade, you don't want to be stuck. You don't want your equity stuck in a trade for a very long time, perhaps. So you want to get out of it eventually. So what we're doing here is we're just going to sell whenever the RSI goes back above 60. which might be another way to capture profit. I believe in most cases that would be, unless there's kind of like a slow bleed in the price, and then it just kind of bounces up just a little bit. But for the most part, having the RSI above 60 and setting that to our sell signal to pair along with the profit and loss target is pretty good idea to try and capture some profits, basically. Now that we've done all of this, now we get to actually focus on what I've been wanting to get to. I've described all the code here, so you have an idea of what's actually going on. Below where we have calculated the RSI and the smooth RSI, we're going to be putting in some new code. We're going to start with a new variable, and that is going to be our smooth RSI trend down length. And this is going to be storing the length of our trend. Now you can see I'm setting it to 0 now, and that's because we're just kind of using that as a default, and we're actually going to check what the previous value was now, and not only that, we are going to actually set the trend down length and increment it up 1 if it was already above 1. So essentially what's going on here, actually, we're not actually carrying over the value here. My apologies. What we're going to be doing is we're just going to check if the trend is down, and we're going to add 1 to the previous value. So since we set it to 0 by default, if the trend is down now and we add 1 to it, it's always going to go up 1. But if the trend changes and now it's up, it's just going to stay at 0, and I'll show you how we do that just now. I apologize about the confusion there, but I'll show you how we carry over values again in just a moment. So this one's pretty simple. So we're just going to check to see if our current smooth RSI is below the smooth RSI of the previous candle. And remember, we're putting 1 in here because these arrays are 0-based indexes, and we're going to look back 1 candle. So if that one is true, start a new line, hit tab. Make sure you do that if you're typing the code in yourself, because if you don't have the spaces correctly done, it won't work. And then we're going to check, we're just going to set the SRSI trend down length equal to the SRSI trend down length of the last candle. So if the last candle were 1 or 2, its value was 1 or 2, then we would have carried that value over here. But what we're actually going to be looking for is to increment this value up. So we're actually adding 1 to it every time. So it does carry the value over, but it actually adds 1 to it. So just to be clear, this can increment your value up, and it also carries your value over. But I'll show you how to just carry the value over next in a few minutes here. So we'll continue on. We've got our downtrend length, and we've already got the ability to have our input, our variable for our minimum downtrend length. So before we actually look at how applying this to our conditions is going to work, let's take a look at the strategy right now. And it actually can't compile, so it looks like I have a typo somewhere. So what is this? Oh, yeah. So I forgot to add the colon here. And if you're going to be setting the value of a variable later, you have to do the colon and then the equal sign. So yeah, that was all there was to it. So now we can see our strategy. It's actually pretty profitable, even with as simple as it is, but we want to try and improve on it and use these other things that we're learning throughout the series. So let's take a look at our performance summary. It would have gained 8.78%, and I actually have the fees added in here. This would be if you were on Binance. The strategy is maybe I took the fees out. My apologies. I thought I had those in there. Nope, there they are. They just weren't loading a second ago. So the commission value is 0.1, and that is the same as Binance. So if you're trading on Binance, it's the same. And if you wanted to account for slippage, you could do that as well. So back to the strategy tester, you can see it was pretty profitable. And out of all the trades, there wasn't a whole lot going back through January 21st on the 5-minute chart, but they're pretty accurate as far as trying to predict a chance to get profit, because all but one of them were profitable. You can see we had a total of 12 trades. That means 11 out of 12 were profitable, which is actually really good. The max drawdown was only 1.79%, and you made 8.78% profit using this particular strategy just since, let's see, it's about a month and a half ago now. So in a month and a half, you could have made 8.78% using just this strategy against Bitcoin if you had followed it during that time. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that it's going to continue to do that, and don't take any of this as financial advice, of course. I always have to say that. None of this is actually financial advice. Even if you make a strategy on TradingView and it looks great, that doesn't mean that it's actually going to translate once you actually go to trade against it, because the markets change and how the price action works changes. But we're just trying to identify what would work best. So back to our Pine editor. Actually, I want to take another look at the performance summary, because we're going to be comparing mostly our net profit, which is 8.78%. And now what we're going to do is we're going to have to account for that smooth SRSI downtrend. So we've set that here. So let me copy this variable length. And let's go back to our is a buy, and we'll add one more condition to the is a buy signal. And we're going to make sure that our SRSI trend down length is greater than or equal to, since we said it was a minimum, the minimum SRSI downtrend input that we used. Let's go back here, add that in there, and that's all there is. We captured the length of the downtrend simply by incrementing the value up by 1 every candle. Then we used our input, and we compared our trend down length to the input based on what we would want, and that's all there is to it. So let's save this, and hopefully I don't have any syntax errors. Okay, perfect. So this trade still would have occurred because it was going down for at least 3. Let's go back to our strategy tester. Now our net profit actually went down. That's because it took a trade out that it wouldn't have otherwise hit. So you do need to play around with these to try and find the optimal settings. But for the most part, we did one less trade because there's only 11 now, that there still is the one that was not profitable. But you have to be willing to accept the risk when you're looking at these sorts of things to create one that's very profitable. A lot of times when I was playing around with the settings on this particular strategy, what would happen is you would have a strategy that was profitable 100% of the time, but it only traded once a month. So that wasn't really great, because it would only get the profit of that one trade, and you want your profits to compound if you're trying to make money. So you take that 1.5% profit as part of, and there's my my Brave notification, but you would take the profits that you made off of this trade and include that in the amount that you put in the next trade, so you made more and more every single time you make profit. So you want to flip your equity more to compound it more often. And that, of course, is not financial advice again, but if you want to see more profit on your performance summary, you usually do want it to have more trades, because the higher win rate that you have with profit and the more trades means you're going to net more profit. It's pretty simple math when you think about it. But let's take a look back at our code. I promised you I was going to show you how we did something here. So let's see. Let's look at the lower lows here, and I'm going to show you how to plot this on the chart, just because this is probably how you would use it if you were creating an indicator. So I'm going to create one called lowest low. Set this equal to 0. All right. Oops. That's a habit from C#. We have our lowest low set to 0. And let's actually set this. Actually, I want to do something different. I don't want to do the lowest low. I want to do trend change. trend change down. So we're going to plot now the price whenever the trend changes down, and we're going to be able to tell that the trend just changed down because it's going to just equal 1 because it incremented up 1 from 0. So this is a little bit different than what I was going to show you, but it's the same principle here. So we have our trend change down equal to 0. Then, similar to how we did that before, we're also going to check to see, and we can actually do this in one line, by the way. Instead of having this if statement here, we could have done this in one line before, but it's a little bit more clear that way. So we're going to do this in one line. So if the trend changed down, we're going to do this by checking, and we are going to check the SRSI trend down length. So if that is equal to 1, we'll know that it just started its trend down change. So, and if you're not following along with the syntax here and you wonder why I'm putting a question mark here, please go back to the previous videos. Basically, we're checking to see if this condition is true, and if it is, we're going to return a certain value, and if it's not, we're going to return another one. So let's see, the trend changed down, so we are going to set that equal to the close. Otherwise, if it did not change down, we are going to set it to the previous value of trend change down. Excellent. And we have to tell it was the previous candle. Now I actually want to go back and set a default value here just to make sure that we don't run into any errors with it trying to access the value from the previous candle. So it's pretty much just one line of code, but we're initializing our variable here. And now let's actually plot that trend change down, and that should take care of our video, hopefully, if everything works out like I expect. This is live coding, so we'll get to see how that works out. Integer type. Okay. So we have to do this occasionally, where we have to tell the script what type of series we're using or what type of variable we're using. And this particular variable by default is just going to assume it's an integer, but since we're going to assign it a value of close, which is a float, you can see on the screen when I've hovered over it now, the type is float. We have to make sure that we declare our variable as a float, and it should take care of it now. Okay, after holding my breath, it worked. You can see now whenever the trend changes down, it plots a new price. So the trend changed down here, and you can tell when we look at the chart, this is going to be on these little red arrows on the smooth RSI because that's what those mean on that particular indicator. You can see it plotted a new price, trend changed down here, plotted a new price, new price, new price, new price. So you can kind of see how you can use this to carry over values. But yeah, I hope this has been useful for you. If it has, please like the video. Also subscribe, especially if you like this video. You'll probably like a lot of my other content because we cover a lot of PineScript tutorials here. And if you haven't seen those, please go back and watch those. But we cover this, and we also discuss trading indicators and also crypto-related things as well. So please subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my TradingView profile where you can see a lot of the stuff we've already created in this series, which probably be really helpful. If you haven't already seen the other videos, you can take a look at code we've already done that's open source. This particular indicator, probably not going to be open source, at least not for now. And let me add myself back to the video, now that I can add myself back to the video. This indicator or this strategy that we're working on is probably not going to be open source for now, but if you're following along as I'm doing it, you can probably copy the code. It's not a big deal. And when we're done with the indicator, or when we're done with the strategy, I should say, then I'll probably make it open source, since, I mean, the code's already open source in the video and you can copy it from that anyway. I just want to make sure it's a final product when I actually publish it, in case anyone wants to actually use it. So thank you for watching. And for those of you who have been watching, please check out the description of the video. There is a link to my referral for TradingView if you don't already have a paid account on there and you want one. I would appreciate if you use the referral link because it does help me keep my subscription up on their site, and the premium subscription is pretty expensive. So I would appreciate if you are going to do that. You might as well use the referral link. I would really appreciate that. But other than that, thank you all. Have a nice day, and see you in the next one.